It started as an ordinary day in the suburban sprawl of Evergreen Meadows, an area where neatly trimmed lawns and orderly mailboxes were as common as morning coffee. For most residents, the arrival of Amazon packages was a daily ritual, a small thrill delivered right to their doorsteps. But for me, that simple pleasure turned into a nightmare. I had been eagerly awaiting the delivery of a limited edition gadget I'd saved for months, only to discover that my doorstep had been ransacked. Empty boxes and scattered packing tape were all that remained. My heart sank as I realized that someone had been stealing my Amazon packages. I knew exactly who the culprit was. Karen, the self-appointed neighborhood enforcer known for her overzealous policing of what she called proper behavior. Karen had a reputation. If something was out of place, or if she suspected someone was not living up to the community standards, she would not hesitate to report it. I had heard her complain about everything from mismatched trash bins to improperly placed garden gnomes. But packages? I never expected her to cross that line. Fury and disbelief churned within me as I pieced together the evidence from my security camera. There she was, Karen herself, slipping over the low wall of my front yard with a determined stride, snatching a neatly delivered Amazon box right off my porch. The footage left no doubt. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity or a misdelivered package. Karen had stolen my package, likely thinking she was protecting our neighborhood standards, or maybe simply to assert her unwelcome authority. In that charge moment, I decided that passive anger wouldn't suffice. I was done being the victim of petty, self-righteous behavior. Instead of going to the police or the HOA, options that would only drag on for weeks, I hatched a plan that would not only expose Karen for what she was, but would also deliver a dose of colorful, literal payback. I decided to set a glitter bomb trap that would turn her world into a sparkling spectacle of consequences. I spent hours devising the perfect setup, carefully selecting the right kind of eco-friendly glitter that would explode into a dazzling shower, leaving no doubt about who was in the right. As I meticulously prepared the trap, every thought was fueled by a blend of righteous anger and a desire for creative retribution. Little did I know, the dramatic twist that was about to unfold would captivate not just my neighbors, but the entire community and even catch the attention of local media. The stage was set for a showdown that would transform an act of theft into an unforgettable lesson in accountability. One where a stolen package would lead to an explosion of glitter and a public reckoning for Karen's unchecked abuse of power. Evergreen Meadows was a picture of suburban perfection, a community where every mailbox was neatly aligned, every lawn impeccably trimmed, and every resident took pride in presenting a flawless facade to the world. Rows of identical houses, adorned with pristine gardens and sparkling driveways, formed a uniform tapestry of order. The neighborhood's reputation was carefully curated by the Homeowners Association, HOA, and any deviation from the expected standard was met with swift disapproval. Among the residents was Karen Jenkins, a woman in her early 50s who had earned a notorious reputation as the neighborhood's self-appointed enforcer of rules. With her sharply coiffed hair, designer clothing, and an ever-present air of moral superiority, Karen was known for her readiness to call the HOA, and even the police, over what she deemed minor infractions. Whether it was a slightly overgrown hedge or a misplaced recycling bin, Karen was quick to condemn and report. To her, maintaining order was a sacred duty, and she believed that she was the only one who truly understood what it meant to live in Evergreen Meadows. On the other side of the street lived me, someone who had always embraced the convenience and efficiency of modern life. I was a tech enthusiast, an early adopter of everything from smart home devices to the latest online shopping trends. My modest house, though unassuming compared to some of the sprawling estates in the neighborhood, was my sanctuary, a place where I invested my time and effort to create a comfortable, secure environment for myself. Among my prized possessions were the Amazon packages that arrived like little treasures, each one a symbol of my hard work and modern lifestyle. Then there was the community at large, a diverse group of residents whose attitudes spanned from traditional conservatism to a more progressive embrace of individuality. Most residents appreciated the neat order of Evergreen Meadows, but many were growing tired of Karen's overzealous, often petty interventions. Whispers in the local coffee shops and social media groups revealed that Karen's behavior was not new. It had become almost a ritual for her to enforce her own strict vision of propriety, even if it meant crossing boundaries that should have been respected. The physical setting of Evergreen Meadows itself played a crucial role in this unfolding drama. With its lush green lawns, flower-lined sidewalks, and a quiet street where neighbors greeted each other by name, the neighborhood was designed to project a sense of unity and tradition. Yet, behind this carefully maintained exterior, a simmering tension lay just beneath the surface, tension that would soon erupt in a spectacle that no one could have predicted. As fate would have it, the day I discovered my stolen Amazon packages was also the day I decided to take matters into my own hands. Fueled by frustration and the need to expose the hypocrisy behind Karen's actions, I spent hours in my garage assembling a glitter bomb trap. Every component was carefully selected: a discrete container, a custom circuit to trigger the explosion remotely, and of course an eco-friendly, high-shine glitter designed to burst forth in an explosive array of color. My heart raced with anticipation as I prepared for what I hoped would be a decisive moment of retribution, one that would not only recover my stolen packages in spirit, but also serve as a warning to anyone who dared misuse the power of community trust. The stage was set against the backdrop of a seemingly ordinary suburban day, a day that would soon be transformed into a dramatic confrontation between old-school prejudice and modern ingenuity. In the calm before the storm, every detail, from the glistening pool to the orderly driveways, hinted at the impending clash of values, a clash that would leave an indelible mark on Evergreen Meadows. The chain reaction began the moment I discovered the theft. I watched in disbelief as my security camera revealed Karen Jenkins herself, sneaking over the low fence and lifting one of my freshly delivered Amazon boxes from my porch. The video was indisputable. There was no ambiguity. Karen had stolen my package. The act, which I initially considered a minor transgression, suddenly took on a personal and symbolic significance. It wasn't just about a missing package. It was about the abuse of authority and the exploitation of community trust. Anger and determination surged through me. I couldn't stand by and let Karen continue to enforce her narrow vision of order at the expense of everyone's rights. I decided then and there that I would set up the glitter bomb trap, a plan that had been simmering in my mind as a way to reclaim what was rightfully mine and send a message to anyone who would abuse power for personal vendettas. Over the next several hours, I meticulously prepared the trap. I carefully selected a container that looked ordinary enough to blend in with the neighborhood decor. A small, nondescript box placed near my front door, inconspicuous yet primed to unleash a cascade of sparkling glitter at the perfect moment. I rigged it with a custom-built circuit and a remote trigger that I could activate at a moment's notice. Every step was executed with precision, as I knew that the success of the trap depended on its ability to catch Karen off guard. Meanwhile, the incident did not remain confined to my front yard. My neighbors, many of whom had grown weary of Karen's frequent complaints and calls to the HOA, began to discuss the theft with hushed voices and knowing glances. Social media groups dedicated to our neighborhood quickly lit up with posts sharing the security footage and speculating about Karen's motivations. "She's always been a control freak," one post read, while another commented, "I can't believe she would stoop so low as to steal from her own neighbors." The digital chatter added fuel to the growing tension, and what had started as a personal loss was now becoming a communal controversy. As the day wore on, I watched with mounting satisfaction as the evidence continued to build against Karen. I even received messages from other residents who admitted to similar experiences, small, petty transgressions that they had once overlooked but now saw as part of a broader pattern of abuse. Karen's reputation, once bolstered by her relentless vigilance, was beginning to unravel. Then, late in the afternoon, the moment of reckoning arrived. I had positioned the glitter bomb trap strategically near my front door, ensuring that it would be triggered if Karen dared to approach again. I waited with a mix of nervous anticipation and a sense of righteous determination. Every minute felt like an eternity, and my heart pounded as I imagined the cascade of glitter, a visual explosion that would symbolically expose Karen's true colors to the entire neighborhood. The tension reached its peak when, just as dusk began to settle over Evergreen Meadows, Karen appeared at my doorstep once more. She was on her phone, likely continuing to monitor the neighborhood for any perceived violations. Unaware of the trap that awaited her, she stepped closer. That was the moment I had been preparing for. With a deep breath and a steady hand, I activated the remote trigger. In an instant, the trap erupted, a dazzling explosion of glitter that cascaded over Karen, coating her in a sparkling shower of colors. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Neighbors gasped, smartphones were raised to capture every moment, and Karen's expression shifted from shock to utter disbelief. The glitter, harmless yet overwhelming, served as an unmissable symbol of poetic justice, an explosion that revealed not only her petty misconduct, but also the deep-seated arrogance that had driven her to abuse her perceived power. For a few long seconds, the air was filled with the glittering spectacle, and then, as it slowly settled, the full gravity of the moment became clear. Karen, now transformed into a literal embodiment of her own misguided pride, stood frozen, an image that would soon be etched into the collective memory of Evergreen Meadows. The dramatic reversal was complete. A petty theft and a series of small injustices had culminated in a public spectacle that left no doubt about who was in the right. The conflict buildup had reached a fever pitch, as the glitter bomb not only served as a personal victory, but also ignited a broader conversation about accountability, respect, and the dangers of unchecked authority. Every whispered comment, every shared video clip on social media reinforced the message that the community would no longer tolerate the abuse of power for personal vendettas. In the aftermath of the glitter explosion, Evergreen Meadows buzzed with energy and debate. Neighbors who had long suffered in silence found their voices, and social media exploded with reactions. Videos of Karen, drenched in glitter and frozen in shock, were shared thousands of times. Hashtags like #GlitterJustice and #KarenExposed trended locally, sparking a wave of commentary that challenged the very foundation of a neighborhood's hierarchy. Local news outlets quickly picked up the story, with reporters eager to document the dramatic turn of events. Interviews with residents revealed a mix of amusement, relief, and a desire for accountability. "It's about time someone stood up to her," one neighbor commented on a live broadcast, while another remarked, "Our community deserves better than a bully who abuses her power." The digital evidence of the glitter explosion became a rallying cry, a symbol of the collective resistance against petty tyranny. Within the HOA, discussions erupted over the incident. Longtime board members, who had once defended Karen's strict enforcement of rules, now faced mounting pressure from residents demanding change. Emergency meetings were convened, and debates raged over whether to take further action against those who misuse community resources. "This isn't just about one act of misbehavior," argued a progressive board member. "It's about the underlying attitudes that let prejudice dictate who belongs in our neighborhood." The atmosphere was charged with urgency and the promise of reform. The local police department also weighed in. Officer Aaron Lewis, who had been a silent observer during the incident, was called upon to provide an official statement. In a press conference, he emphasized that while the glitter bomb was a nonviolent form of retribution, it underscored a deeper issue, one where personal bias had infiltrated everyday life. "Our community's trust in public resources is sacred," he stated firmly. "We must ensure that those resources are used responsibly, and when they're misused, there must be accountability." His words resonated with both residents and officials, further galvanizing calls for systemic change. As digital evidence continued to circulate, community forums and town hall meetings became hotbeds of passionate debate. Many residents began sharing their own experiences of being marginalized or bullied by those who felt entitled to enforce arbitrary standards. These personal stories, woven together through social media posts and live discussions, painted a picture of a community in need of healing. "We have to stand together against this kind of abuse," one activist declared during a meeting. "No one should ever be made to feel less than they are because someone else's arrogance got the better of them." The incident also caught the attention of local civil rights organizations, which saw it as an opportunity to address a broader issue: the misuse of power and the erosion of community values. Public rallies were organized, and influential figures spoke out on local television about the need to dismantle the old guard of elitism that had long dictated who was worthy of respect. Today's events remind us that justice is not just about laws and rules. It's about treating each other with dignity, one community leader remarked, her voice filled with conviction. Amidst the rising tension, Karen Simmons found herself increasingly isolated. Once regarded by some as a staunch defender of community standards, her repeated misuse of the 911 system had now become a glaring example of personal bias. Neighbors who had once turned a blind eye to her behavior now whispered behind closed doors, and digital archives of her past complaints began to circulate, each one reinforcing the narrative of a woman driven more by prejudice than by genuine concern for her community. Local officials, spurred by the outcry, initiated a review of HOA policies and procedures regarding emergency calls. The goal was clear: to ensure that public resources could never again be exploited for personal vendettas. "We must safeguard our community's integrity," declared a city council member during a public forum. "Our policies need to reflect the values of fairness and accountability that every resident deserves." The debate was intense, and the pressure on the HOA to reform grew with every shared video and every supportive comment online. By the end of the week, the combined force of public opinion, digital evidence, and institutional review had reached a fever pitch. The glitter bomb incident had transformed from a personal act of revenge into a symbol of resistance, a beacon calling for accountability in the face of abuse of power. The entire community of Evergreen Meadows was now united in its demand that such incidents be prevented in the future, and that those who misused public resources for personal bias face strict consequences. Every new post on social media, every live stream of community meetings added to the growing chorus that proclaimed, "Enough is enough." The escalating tension was not just about a stolen package or a glitter explosion. It was about the fundamental right of every individual to live without the shadow of prejudice. The stage was now set for a dramatic turning point, a moment when the collective will of the community would force lasting change. The decisive moment came on a crisp morning in a packed boardroom at the Evergreen Meadows Community Center. Senior city officials, representatives from the HOA, local police department members, community leaders, and members of the media had gathered to hear the final resolution of the internal investigation into Karen Simmons' repeated misuse of the 911 system, and by extension, her role in the glitter bomb incident. With a calm, yet commanding presence, Councilwoman Michelle Andrews stepped up to the podium. After a thorough review of all digital evidence, security footage, and eyewitness testimonies, we have reached an unequivocal conclusion, she began, her voice steady and clear. "It is evident that the 911 call made by Mrs. Karen Simmons was not a genuine report of a disturbance, but rather an act rooted in personal bias. This call was a misuse of public resources, a deliberate attempt to impose one's prejudiced view on our community." A heavy silence enveloped the room as Councilwoman Andrews continued. "Effective immediately, Mrs. Simmons' record of discriminatory calls will be subjected to a full disciplinary review. Furthermore, we will be implementing stricter protocols to ensure that our emergency services are protected from being used to serve personal vendettas." Her words were met with nods of approval and murmurs of solidarity from the assembled officials and community representatives. At that moment, a respected representative from the community, a longtime advocate for justice and equality, rose to speak. "Today, we stand united against the abuse of power," he declared, his voice resonating with both authority and compassion. "Let this be the turning point where we say that no one is above accountability, and every act of prejudice will be met with the full force of our collective resolve." His declaration was met with a thunderous round of applause, affirming the community's commitment to change. Following this, a senior police official presented the final dossier, a meticulously compiled record of all digital evidence, internal logs, and multiple eyewitness accounts. The dossier confirmed beyond any doubt that Marcus Delgado's actions, securing his property, were entirely legitimate, while every instance of Mrs. Simmons's 911 calls was driven by personal bias. The Internal Affairs Panel unanimously supported the decision to impose strict disciplinary measures, and the full report was scheduled for public release to ensure complete transparency. Councilwoman Andrews concluded, "Let this be the day we reclaim our community's integrity. We reject prejudice and abuse of power in all its forms. Our commitment to fairness and justice will guide us as we forge a future where every resident is treated with the respect they deserve." Her final words echoed powerfully throughout the room, marking a definitive turning point in Evergreen Meadows. In that defining moment, as every face in the boardroom reflected shock, determination, and hope, the balance of power shifted irrevocably. The evidence was clear, and the public's demand for accountability had been answered. The turning point was undeniable. Personal bias would no longer be tolerated, and every misuse of public resources would be met with swift, uncompromising action. In the weeks following the landmark decision, Evergreen Meadows began a gradual but profound transformation. News of the disciplinary review against Karen Simmons spread rapidly through local media and on social platforms, sparking widespread discussions about the responsible use of public resources and the need for community accountability. Town hall meetings and community forums were held with unprecedented attendance, as residents from every corner of Evergreen Meadows gathered to share their experiences and demand lasting reforms. "We must ensure that every call for help is treated with the dignity it deserves," one impassioned speaker declared at a community meeting. The collective voice of the residents was clear. No one would be allowed to misuse emergency services to enforce personal vendettas ever again. Local newspapers ran editorials with headlines like "Prejudice Unmasked," "A New Dawn for Evergreen Meadows," and "Community Reclaims Justice." Social media was abuzz with hashtags such as #JusticeForAll and #NoMoreBias, reinforcing the idea that the truth had triumphed over petty prejudice. The digital evidence from the incident, video clips capturing the shocking moment when Marcus flashed his FBI badge, became a powerful symbol of accountability that resonated deeply with the community. Within the Evergreen Meadows HOA and police department, significant reforms were swiftly set in motion. Senior officials, led by Director James Carter and Lieutenant Raymond Ortiz, rolled out comprehensive training programs on cultural sensitivity and ethical conduct. Regular internal audits and transparent disciplinary protocols were established to ensure that every 911 call was properly scrutinized and that the misuse of public resources was met with immediate consequences. "Our commitment is to serve every resident without bias," Lieutenant Ortiz stated during a follow-up press conference, reaffirming the department's pledge to rebuild public trust. Community leaders and civil rights organizations also took proactive steps to address the broader issues revealed by the incident. They organized workshops and public forums aimed at educating residents on the importance of diversity and the dangers of allowing personal prejudice to dictate public actions. "We have the power to change our community for the better," one activist declared at a well-attended forum, urging residents to look beyond superficial differences and work together toward a more inclusive future. For Marcus Delgado, whose responsible actions had inadvertently sparked this movement, the experience solidified his status as a local hero. Neighbors who had once taken his quiet diligence for granted now celebrated his example of integrity and accountability. His story was shared widely on social media and featured in local news segments, serving as a reminder that genuine ownership and responsibility should always be recognized and honored. Karen Simmons, on the other hand, found herself facing the consequences of her repeated misuse of the emergency system. Isolated by the overwhelming digital evidence and the collective voice of a community that had grown tired of unchecked bias. She was forced to confront the reality that her actions had undermined the trust of her neighbors. Her case became a cautionary tale, a stark illustration of how personal prejudice, when allowed to govern public behavior, can have far-reaching repercussions.